time out of their busy schedules to come and give the Transportation Committee and those of the council and their assistants who are in attendance to hear the proposals so we can digest it for public hearing on the 28th. I also want to welcome the public. I'd like to thank Commissioner Stevens for coming.
Well, that'd be nice if he was
I'm
here.
sorry, Stephen. Night. I'm so sorry. See, I keep getting your height is confusing. Always. I can't. Short, tall, short. Doesn't. Anyway. I know. Anyway, I want to thank you for the opportunity to come. Thank you, Commissioner Knight, for showing up. And I was looking to see Mr. Dawkins from Traffic and Engineering, Mr. Hopkins from Planning and Zoning. Thank you so much for being here. The community activists are here. Also, thank you for coming to listen, and the press as well, and giving us an opportunity to receive this information. This is not a public hearing. This is just a public hearing. That means we have to hear what this gentleman says so that we can formulate exactly what's going on and we can put our questions to a better use. Because we have so few counselors here, Mr. Cooper, if they're not in-depth, detailed questions, we will allow questions from the counselors at the end of his presentation. But if you would, please proceed.
Yes, I'm on. Okay. I'm going to be a little bit hampered because I realize now my presentation is presented. Will it work? Is it working? If you don't mind, then I'll stand to the side so that I can see the presentation. Mr. Taylor is going to operate my computer and also my pointer. And we have gained coordination through several presentations of this presentation, but we will see if we can make that work. I do want to thank you for the opportunity to come today and discuss with you something that is very important to you and to us. And that is the replacement of the Central Business District bridges on I-20 and 20. So, Lance, if we could just give you a brief history. This strip of road was opened to traffic in 1971, which means it's about 42 years old now. Probably originally had a 40-year design life, I guess. I'm not an engineer, but I think I've been told that was the original anticipated life. It was designed for about 80,000 vehicles a day. Unfortunately, we're currently carrying almost 160,000 vehicles per day. And as you can see there, the projection for 2035 is for 225,000 vehicles per day. We've had 10 incidents of severe damage to the bridge. I'm sure you are familiar with those. We have a continuing problem with steel poles falling on the bridge. We have been very fortunate. We have not had anyone hurt through any of those incidents. And I guess the last incident we had was a truck actually turned over and dumped 2 aluminum coils, and we again were lucky that we did not have anyone injured. We have had about 650 almost accidents in a 4-year time period. We average 1 accident almost every day in the strip road. And those accidents, we believe, are directly related to some safety issues that we'll get into in just a moment. We've discussed within the ALDOT structure 4 different approaches to this project. One was simply to replace the bridge decks, leave the physical layout of the road and the bridge and the ramps as it is today, but redeck it. And decking it would mean exactly what that says, tearing off the old deck, putting on the new. And while we were doing that, we would replace such pieces of steel infrastructure, superstructure, as turned out to be damaged or stressed. The second one, which is what we are actively pursuing, is to replace the bridges. The third one that we will talk about today is the potential relocation of this section of interstate. It's something that is generally referred to as the Henley corridor, and depending on which way you approach that, it may in its location, but it would generally be somewhere within the proximity of Indiana. And then the fourth one, we named the Birmingham dig, and that would be sinking the interstate to the 6,600 feet that lies between the two route interchanges, the Stevens interchange and the 5965 interchange. The bridge deck replacement project, which is what we pursued originally, would have produced no capacity improvements, no operational improvements. It would have left us with 3 lanes in each direction and no shoulders, which is a condition today that means that if we have any kind of disabled vehicle, whether it be an actual wreck or just simply a stop auto vehicle, it tends to bring that section of road to somewhat of a grounding halt because we have no real ability to get that vehicle out of the flow of traffic. And we have no ability other than through shutdown to get emergency vehicles or removal vehicles to the location. Narrow shoulders cause that issue, and the safety issues that I mentioned with weaving. And the weaves are largely at each end of that structure. Lance is pointing to, if you will, Lance, point to the east end first. The weave situation that we have here is traffic coming on from the Red Mountain Expressway attempting to go to the east. And the largely truck traffic, some automobile traffic, but a significant portion of the truck traffic that is coming east on 5920 and exiting 31st Street. And those two streams of traffic have to leave and cross each other in a very short distance. And although we are all supposed to be alert as drivers all the time, sometimes we're not, and we have a lot of bumping and scrubbing that goes on in there. Fortunately, they're typically not terribly serious, but they do have the effect of stopping the interstate. And then on the west end, we have 2 weaves there. In the morning, predominantly, we have an incoming weave with the 65 southbound traffic coming toward downtown from 65 north, traveling south, comes up through the route interchange, ends up on the left side as it enters 5920, and weaves across the right side to exit 17th Street. That traffic conflicts with through traffic and to some extent with the traffic that comes on from 65 northbound off I-65. And then in the afternoon, and sometimes throughout the day, we have another weave that is a problem where traffic enters at 18th Street. You enter there on the right side. If you are trying to go to 65 south, you weave across all the lanes to get when you exit 459 south. And we have a number of bumps and bruises that occur there. That would cost us about $128 million. And we were basically at what we call 90% plans on this. Back in 2011, 90% plans means that we're basically ready to take bids. At that time, the city requested that we look at redoing this project, and instead of redecking the bridges, that we tear them down. And the original request from the city was that we tear them down and rebuild them in the same configuration. And that request was based on a belief on the city's part, and I think most particularly the Civic Center's part, that concrete structured bridges would be quieter in that area than the steel bridges that we have there today. At that time, we said to the city that would be a significant step for us to take because we're really far along on this project. But we agreed if the city and county would join in that request, we would do it, and they did so. Both the city, represented by the mayor's office, and the county, represented by Chairman Carrington, and Manager Fellows did come and talk with us and ask us to look at rebuilding the bridges out of concrete. And so we started to pursue that possibility. This, I believe, is the first plan. This is the current plan, excuse me. We skipped some iterations, but this will show you what we're anticipating doing today. But I need to explain this a little bit. As we got into the process of looking at rebuilding the bridges, it occurred to us that it might be possible to get an additional lane through and to get the shoulder to the road that we do not have today. And so we pursued that, and we were able to do that within the existing right-of-way that we have to a significant degree. I think any right-of-way that we will acquire for this project is for new ramps. I am correct. To try to explain this, and I don't know if you are looking at a copy of the presentation, but Lance, if you would take me through the colors. The yellow is bridge structure to be replaced in this plan. Is that correct? The lavender purplish color is bridge structure to be retained. Is that correct? And the blue color is roadway and ramp structure to be constructed. Is there another one that I need to address? I'm a little far away. Red is roadway to be replaced. And we do have copies of this presentation for you. And so this project has been through 3 iterations based on public input. The first iteration of the project would have involved a significant rework of 11th Avenue through the Civic Center area, with the plan being to divert traffic to 11th Avenue during the construction period and be able to handle local traffic that way. Access to downtown would have then come off 11th Avenue. We encountered 3 sets of comments that I can quickly remember. One from the Civic Center, one from the 31st Street business community, because our original proposal would have closed that ramp to eliminate that weed, and we received comments from the Norwood neighborhood. Now, we received comments from others, but I think those are the predominant groups who commented on that plan. And this addressed certain issues, additional lanes, shoulders, the weeds. It raises the bridge from the current height. I believe the bridge in the new configuration would be anywhere from 20 to 26 feet above ground. And it builds the bridges in different ways, and the visibility under the bridges would be substantially improved. The city can improve underneath. I believe Birmingham is now in charge of coordinating a city civic center response to us. It's how they would like to do in underneath space. And then it does provide much better access, particularly back to the interstate on the west end of town. Issues that we had raised at one point, we had a closure of part of 24th. People objected to that, and we changed the plan to leave that open. Same with 28th Street. As I said, we originally proposed restricting the access to the 31st Street interchange, and at some substantial additional cost, we are now building a separate ramp to provide access to 31st Street. And it does address the weed at LMDC through the provision of the additional ramp. This is just a picture of how you would see the bridge from 19th Street looking north. And I think that is basically from the intersection of 19th and Abraham Wood. Is that correct? This is 19th Street looking south from somewhere in the Civic Center area, and I don't know the precise point on that. We had folks come up and make all these pictures, and then they take them and put them in 3D and back into these pictures. And I don't know exactly the starting point of that one, but somewhere on 19th. This is from the front of the Sheraton, looking back toward downtown. And this is Richard Arrington looking east. Because of the expansion of the width in our right-of-way, 9th Avenue east of Richard Arrington will be under the South Mountain portion of the interstate. And will be 3 lanes wide. This is Richard Arrington looking west. At Richard Arrington, if you are proceeding west on 9th Avenue, you will make, I think we have an animation that shows this in a little while, but you will make a slight right turn and then be able to make a left back on Richard Arrington and proceed down the front of the exhibition hall. And that was particularly important for the Civic Center, that the exhibition hall remain accessible from 9th Avenue. I think they have a number of exhibitors who unload at that location. This is on Richard Arrington looking north toward the Civic Center, and Richard Arrington looking back south. And then if assuming the software works, we have an animation of a couple of drives through this area. This is driving Richard Arrington under the new bridge. And it'll take you right on down through the Civic Center area. There's a right turn on 9th Avenue. This exists today. This is 9th Avenue driving west, so you're in front of the parking deck, you make the little jog, go on past the exhibition hall. And that's the only two of those we have. It takes a lot of time to put those two together. So we did those two, we thought those were the two primary movements that people would be interested in seeing. The cost of this has suffered from the cost creep, of course, as additional people wanted additional things. When we originally costed this proposal, it was going to be about $150 million more than the bridge redeck. And we all believe that the addition of the additional lane and shoulders and safety issues we could address would be worth it. With the additional ramps that we have produced now, in response to the 31st Street business community, and in response to the Civic Center's need for us to disentangle ourselves from 11th Avenue through the Civic Center, to leave them free to do their development without having to worry about us, has created some additional ramps. And so at this point, we're at $362 million in anticipated cost of this alternative. This is the timeline, and you will see that there are two up there. I should have stopped a moment ago and explained that one of the things that adds about $25 million to the cost is that we decided to do this in what is called segmental construction. And what segmental construction does, if you could go back, Lance, to one of the pictures of the bridge structure, if you can get one that's a little closer, this one. If you notice, the bottom is a uniform bottom, does not have exposed beams. And those are segments that are literally constructed offside and trucked to the side and put in place on the columns by crank. Segmental construction adds about $25 million to the cost, but it does make it possible to close the bridge for, we estimate, about a 4-month shorter period of time. And it does produce a bottom to the bridge that, from an aesthetic standpoint, gives the city a lot more opportunity to do something with it that might be reasonably attractive. Now back to the timeline. The first part, the first line, is for I-65 and the EBC and ramp improvements. And Lance, if you would, just flip back to the basic structure. Yes, the overall plan. And if you could sort of take your pointer and outline what we're talking about in this first phase of construction. These are new ramps that will be built from 18th. And remember, we said we have a weave from 18th now. Now you would be able from 18th to directly access 65 South, 5920 West, and 65 North without that traffic ever crossing. It would all be done on ramps that would be what we call braided ramps, and the traffic would cross but at different levels. That eliminates that weave. It's reasonably expensive to do. We also have a ramp that will bring you across from 5920 headed north or east, allow you to come off on 17th Street from 65, you'll be able to do the same thing, and from 65 north, we will braid a ramp actually between the two parts of the interstate. bring you down to 17th Street so that you do not have to weave in that traffic and everyone will be able to access the street. At the other end, we will rebuild those ramps that cause the weaves today in EBCs. And that used to be my path home, so I used to travel that weave daily. And I think I became pretty good at it, but it still wouldn't. But we'll rebuild those ramps and be able to merge the traffic on and off without a weave. And that too is expensive. And then we are building a ramp for 31st Street interchange off 59 North 20 East that will actually leave the interstate along with the current Caraway ramp and will fly you over and put you down at 31st Street without weaving with the EBC traffic. Good, now let's go back to the time. I think we covered all of them. We'll go back to the timeline now. I'll try to make some sense of this. The top timeline is the ramps. Because we're going to do our best to build all the ramp structure that we can before we actually close the bridges, ramp construction, so that we have done two things. One, we have limited period of closure. Secondly, we'll make every effort that is reasonable to keep access to downtown in each direction open, just not through downtown on that structure. And so we anticipate going to right-of-way acquisition. In fact, we're talking with some folks about right-of-way acquisition now, but we're not able to proceed with it until we clear the design phase. We anticipate completing right-of-way acquisition for the ramps in mid-year and moving the contract on the ramp portion of the project mid-year this year. We anticipate completing right-of-way acquisition on both. Bottom line is the bridge itself. We do not anticipate moving the contract on the bridge structure until the third quarter of 2015, or fourth quarter. When we let that contract, we estimate that there will be a 6 to 9 month period of time when the contractor will be working on building the bridge segments offsite, but will not be closing the bridge. Will be working underneath to the extent they can, but would not close the bridge. We anticipate closing the structure mid-year 2016, and we anticipate that closure would be 14 to 18 months. A number of people expressed in one form or another that we should look at alternatives. And we probably did not do the best job we could have done in responding to that for two reasons. One reason was that we were reasonably sure we couldn't implement any of the alternatives in a time period that worked here. The other reason was that for 20 years, say 20 years, different people at ALDOT and with the city have pursued trying to develop corridors in this area and have been unable to do so for reasons that we will point out to you in the next few minutes. And so I suspect that we probably appeared to be more close-minded than perhaps we were, but it was because of the experience we had. And in the middle of this process, I decided that we needed to relook at that, and we needed to bring a new set of eyes to it. Someone not deeply involved in designing the current project or anything of that nature. And so we had Volker working with us on this project. We engaged Bart Wagner to take a look at these alternatives. And so the material you're going to see for the rest of this study is pretty much a result of Bart Wagner work that was done in the late summer, early fall of 2013. And our people worked with them, but it was run by David Willingham and Bart Wagner. So I'm at this point. You should never say never. Because in the world we live in, enough time and enough money, you can do most anything. We do not want to say you can't. But we will tell you it would take a long time and cost a lot of money. And we'll try to tell you why. We looked at three alternatives, two potential alternatives to relocate to the Finley corridor and the sinking the interstate alternative. The first alternative we looked at in Finley was from Tallapoosa Street to I-65. Now let me explain why Tallapoosa Street. There's no practical way to depart from the current path of 5920 anywhere east or north of the airport. Because if you do that, to reach the Finley corridor, you branch through so many residences, so many neighborhoods, so many businesses, just about any way you go. And it is so much longer, and it would be even more expensive than these alternatives I'm going to lay out for you now. So we believe that the first place you could look to divert from the current path would be somewhere in the general area of Tallapoosa Street. The colors on this map, the yellow, I believe, is new roadway or right of way, and the red is new roadway. And that route runs from Tallapoosa Street to an intersection with I-65, and as you can see, in this iteration, we have kept you just inside the existing Finley Avenue. And the reason for that is Finley Avenue, if it could be retained, still would be a good local commercial. All the local trucks that traverse this area and so forth, off the interstate. And so the intersection that is shown there with I-65 is just inside the current Finley Avenue intersection, which is right there. The blue is new at-grade roadway that would be required for this alternative. And the yellow is new required bridge structure. And Lance, let's flash through the slides and then go back and go through them one by one in this section. What you saw first was 5965 route interchange. This is existing 5920 in front of the Civic Center. This is the Red Mountain Expressway interchange. Now let's go back to the first one. This one looks like, where did this come from? One of the main detriments to this plan is that if you did it this way, once you reach I-65, from that new interchange down to the current route interchange, you have all the traffic of all three interstates on one roadway. And so the existing I-65 lanes will not carry that. You probably will have to just about double. We estimate on the current route about 16 lanes will be required to do that. And we'll show you later the right-of-way implications that would happen. But this blue structure is to build those new lanes and connect the ramps in ways they would now have to connect. And have the number of lanes on the ramps that you would have to have with the amount of traffic you would have. The yellow is new bridge structure. And you might know that there would have to be a bridge up in Cliff Avenue. Cliff Avenue, there's a bridge now there, but there would have to be a new bridge structure built there. Then you would have to do something with the existing 5920 roadway, because you wouldn't want to leave just the elevated interstate. So you'd have to tear that down and build some sort of, I assume, a boulevard type roadway in that area in front of the Civic Center. At the Red Mountain Expressway, and this is an assumption that we have made, in this model we're assuming that you would choose to try to keep the Red Mountain Expressway connected to I-5920. If you choose to do that, then there would have to be some new ramps built there because your traffic flow would be different when you're coming on a ground level boulevard through there as opposed to the elevated 5920 that the ramps are built for. So there would be new structure required there. There would be some amount of right-of-way required there, as we'll show in a minute. This is kind of a summary, and again, you will be given copies of this. This is sort of a summary of the issues you would face. You'd be talking about roughly 2.5 miles of road. All new road. You would acquire about 150 acres of right-of-way. Our estimate is a little over 30 residences you would displace and about the same number of businesses. The potential issues that you would have, and we've tried to make a laundry list of those issues, and some will be more severe than others. There are some historic sites. The Norwood Historic District is there. There are a couple of other proposed historic districts that would border this path. What we call 4F properties, meaning that we can only intrude on property of that nature with some very special dispensations, which we generally have never been able to get. We would impact one church. The entire path is in the Village Creek floodplain, that we will show you in a minute. That means all of this road would have to be elevated because it is in the floodplain if you went that way. Noise impacts, potentially on 2 elementary schools.
One is closed.
A broad overriding issue of environmental justice. Some geotechnical issues, for example, that interchange is located in the former quarry. And I'm sure those of you who like me frequently go Nicky's from Ocean downtown, remember when the water was there in the quarry and it's been filled up. All we're really saying is, at this point in time, we don't really know what it was filled with. We don't know how well it would support road structure. We don't know if there are environmental issues or whatever there might be. And there may be none. But that's a potential issue. And then there's some other issues with hazmat sites along this route, and we're going to try to run through each one of these points. Environmental justice is simply the overriding issue of not locating federal facilities with adverse effects in disproportionately high human health or environmental effects in either minority or low-income population areas. This area would be that, and so the issue of environmental justice would sort of pervade the entire project and would take, we think, a lot of planning and negotiation, for lack of a better term, to resolve, if it could be resolved. What this chart shows, and I wish we had done a little bit better color delineation, but I believe the red dots are residences and the purplish dots are businesses that would potentially be dislodged by this route. This shows you the Village Creek floodplain. The Village Creek Greenway is in yellow. The floodplain is in blue. This shows the parks and other things of that nature, parks and greenways that would potentially be involved in this route that would have to be dealt with in some way. The historic districts are overlaid there, and I think the purple color is existing, and the more brownish color is proposed. Is that correct? Potential historic districts. And then these greens are the hazmat sites. And we don't know whether, at this point, whether all of these are problems or not problems. They simply show up on the ADM database as being potential hazmat sites. The blue, the light blue that you see here are impacted large industrial sites. The first one is that old quarry that I talked about. The second one to the west there is, I believe, Burlington Northern Railroad, which becomes more involved when we look at another potential tenure route. And this is just an amalgamation of all of the different issues that you face as you go through these corridors. We think this would cost about $1.5 billion. And here's what we think it would take you to do that. Now, at one of the times we presented this, somebody said to me, why can you not do all of these things at the same time? The rules don't work that way. They have to be done in an iterative fashion. And so, just as we are working through the design phase of the current project we're proposing, we would have to work through a design phase of relocation dependent. And primarily we would be charged with clearing an environmental corridor and establishing the ability to build a road through that area under federal rules. We estimate optimistically that would take 6 years. The normal time is probably a little more than that on sophisticated projects. We've been trying to clear the Birmingham Northern Beltline for 30 years. And from people think we have, and some people think we haven't. Whatever you think, I don't care. It's just a difficult thing to do. If we could get a corridor approved, we think it would take 3 years to complete right-of-way acquisition. Now, nominally, you can acquire a property under right of eminent domain in a period of time that is measurable by legal process. It just simply never works that way on the ground. And we think 3 years is a reasonable period of time to relocate over 30 residences and 30 businesses who would have all sorts of individual problems with being relocated, and we are obligated under the federal process to work with each one of those to try to minimize the impact of that relocation. Then, after you acquire right of way, you can proceed to try to relocate the utilities. And the reason this process is this way, the reasoning is that why would you waste potentially money by buying right of way where you're not sure you can do it well? Or why would you move a utility if you weren't sure you could get the right of way or you could get the environmental clearance? And that's why it is an iterative process. We estimate 2 years to relocate the utilities on a 12-year construction period if you could ever get all of that done. And so if you add all of those up, we're estimating, I believe, about 23 years to complete that. That sounds like a terribly long time. I understand that. We actually believe you'd be doing well if you could get it done in 23 years. We looked at a longer relocation, the Finley alternative, which would be to take you from Talputa Street to Arkadelphia Road, and actually you'll see it's slightly past Arkadelphia Road. We think that's an alternative that is worth looking at because it eliminates what I consider to be a somewhat overkill of 16 lanes on I-65 on the border of downtown if we were looking at moving the interstate itself out of downtown. I don't know why we would put 16 lanes right there. The longer alternative goes past Arkadelphia Road and past Finley, but when you take the longer alternative, you are required to move the first leg of the Finley alternative to the north, because you cannot go through the Birmingham Northern Rail Yard, which is where that path would take you if we were on. And so the first part that largely duplicates the first alternative we show is more to the north in this alternative, and I think does largely overlay the current Finley Avenue. Now, I know some people have had the question, why can't you just put the interstate on the Finley corridor? The interstate corridor is almost twice as wide as the existing Finley corridor. And so, to a large extent, you need to be prepared if you start to address the Finley corridor itself that exists today for movement to the interstate. You sort of got to pick which side of the Finley corridor you want to take out or roadway. And given the location of the Burlington Northern Rail Yard, which we think is untouchable, that means you're largely going to address the north side of the current Finley Avenue corridor once you get over there. We'll take you through the same iterations on this one that we did the first proposal. These are the same list of problems. It does not show as well as I wish on this screen, but the changes, the additions to your list of problems are in red. And so you add East Thomas Historic District, you add several churches, you add one more school. The residences are in red. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't do it. It's 4.9 miles, so practically speaking, 5 miles, about 260 acres of right of way. It would be over 200 residences and over 80 businesses. And these dots, again, are not color delineated as well as I wish they were, but the red is, again, residences, and the purple dots are businesses. This is an overlay of that, and if you notice, you're still in the Village Creek floodplain pretty much until you get to I-65. You tend to be out of it once you cross I-65 proceeding west, but you are in the midst of all the residences. And if you notice, the red changes because you're not connecting yourself back to the current route interchange. You are making the 5920 go all the way around and go back to a new interchange slightly west of the existing Arkadelphia Road interchange. And you would do that because the Arkadelphia Road interchange has geometric limits that just wouldn't allow you really to. You couldn't build that interchange today. It's that old. And the design standards have changed that much. If we get hazmat, you skip something on it. Well, we're skipping. Go to the cumulative. There we are. There's the cumulative, and the colors are the same. So the light blue, right at Finley Avenue, Finley Boulevard there, is the Birmingham northern side. The one across is the Wade Sand and Gravel quarry that we would have to get into to build this interchange. The purplish color again is historic districts. Brown is the proposed historic district. Green is hazmat. Yellow is parks and things of that nature. The red is new roadway that would have to be built. The yellow band through again is the greenway. The dark blue again is the floodway. Lighted on the map. We estimate that this one I think cost about $2 billion. It would take longer. We estimate 8 years because once you cross 65, you're going to get into some more iffy area along Finley, and certainly as you cross Arkadelphia down there from an environmental standpoint. Right away, we went to 4 years on it to be a lot more properties. Utility relocation, we stayed at 2. In construction, we went to 14. So I believe this one had about a 25-year estimated development period. What we call the Birmingham Dig, which was a look at a concept developed by Parsons Brinkerhoff for Operation New Birmingham back in 2009. Here are the issues. The simple issue will it fit? How you would construct a retaining wall. And I want to stop and say that a lot of people have compared this to Cincinnati. The big difference here is that Cincinnati started their project with a sunken interstate with downslopes, somewhat like you see in parts of I-65 here today. And so that the interstate was there and they had downslopes to it. What we have is the interstate elevated, and we would have the problem of digging the trench, as opposed to what they did was simply build a retaining wall straight up and then fill into it. We would have to dig the trench, build the retaining walls, and you'll see in a minute that one of the constraints of that is you can't, of course, dig that straight down. You have to dig on the slope so people can work. And that puts us outside of our right-of-way limits. We'll try to show you that in some pictures. You're going to see that there are right at 80 underground utility crossings in that 6,600 feet. And traffic operations would be a problem both long and short term for reasons we'll try to explain. The geometry would be challenging because you would be going from an elevated interstate connecting to